E aí, boa tarde e bem-vindo. Hi and welcome to another reaction video. Today I'm sadly not going to be watching any more of the extra credits Empire of Brazil because it's all done. So one of you guys, I think it was French Bread, Bon Français, if you're still out there, you suggested this, what is it, it's Overly Sarcastic Productions, History Summarised Brazil. I don't know if I should have started with Portugal, because that kind of gives, like, you know, the prequel. But this should be alright. I've heard it's pretty good. I've not actually watched this one. I've watched a few of the History Summarised ones. I think the one that sticks out, I've watched a lot of their stuff to do with, like, the Romans and, like, the Greeks, because I love the classics. And when I say classics, I mean, like, the Romans and the Greeks. But yeah, they did this ep on, I think it was I don't really know how to say it, but the Ptolemies, the Ptolemies, the Ptolemies, the Ptolemies in Egypt after Alexander, and the amount of incest is just insane. Like, I need to get this, like, family tree up. That, let me just show you. Is this gonna work? This is from Reddit, so I don't know how real it is. Yeah, like, just look at this. Like, what is this? This is just, Till, I don't know what Till is. Till Cleopatra was a member of the Ptolemaic dynasty, the most incest family. Yeah, it beggars belief. But the way that they presented this, the actual video from Sarcastic Productions, what's it called? Overly Sarcastic Productions. It was pretty good. I'm not really sure where they're going to go with this. I'm pretty sure the people behind it, these guys, I'm pretty sure they're American. Not that that's going to change anything, you know. Anyway, let's watch. Right, you guys know the drill. If you've watched this before, I'm gonna have to maneuver this thing, so it's good. Right, what am I doing? Before I start talking, right, what to expect. So, history of Brazil, let's go back 10,000 BC, when that, like, land bridge between Russia, like Siberia, Northeast Asia and Alaska was still there. And then it's the first humans to set foot in the Americas, went across, and over generations they worked their way down. And as far as I'm aware, there weren't many centers of civilization as we know it, in the sense of, like, you know, the Mayans or the Aztecs or the Olmecs and Toltecs and all of the techs and stuff. Yeah, I know that it was more indigenous hunter-gatherer rather than, like, that sort of society. Although I don't know, I really don't know that much about pre-colonial Brazil. I don't think a lot of people do, just because there's not that many written records. But yeah, I think around 1500 is probably when the Portuguese show up, thinking that they're going around the Horn of Africa, but whoops, got caught in the trade winds and ended up in Rio. Or Bahia, Salvador, I think that was the first city. I don't know. But either way, yeah, from the 1500s, for the next 300 years, the Portuguese own the place, and that's where Brazil gets its Latin Portuguese background from, and also, you know, the millions of slaves and indigenous people along with Portuguese, and later on, like, various other European and Asian groups that make the fantastically dynamic country that Brazil is. But yeah, I'm just curious to see where they're going to go with this. It's probably going to be quite cheeky. These guys are a bit cheeky. Why is it not working? Right, let me just make sure that this is not too loud.
This video is brought to you by Squarespace. It's a website, and so can you. Nah, I messed that up. With all of my talk of empires throughout world history, it's easy to forget that colonies have feelings too. Not only is it those guys who do all of the legwork to make empire possible in the first—
Ooh, look at this. Fuck me, this is beautiful. Okay, so I'm going to say this is Rio because obviously Sao Paulo doesn't have a harbour. Yeah, I'm guessing this is Rio, and then Christ the Redeemer is probably going to be like there. So you've got Rio, and then like Novi Gasu is like over there, maybe? I don't know. Either way, just look at this. This is beautiful. This looks like, the Japanese like Edo period, like watercolor. Oh, I don't know. Either way, let's continue. I can look at this paint. I might make this my screensaver.
First place, but they're also fascinating in their own right, with purpose-driven economies, distinct local cultures, and unique political relationships with the rest of the world. I've talked before about the seafaring history of Portugal, but today I'd like to pivot across a hemisphere or two to discuss the growth of its colossal colony of Brazil. To figure out why this South American territory became so instrumental and even grew to eclipse the power of its former parent, let's do some history. South American history actually goes back way farther than the 1500s, as thousands of indigenous groups call the continent home in the millennia before colonization. Some are still around, and several are still on.
Whoa. Look at that. Looks like something out of Star Wars. That's mad. And it's something that I always think is really different, and how I know that you're in a different area. Oh god, sorry, I'm not talking very well today. The ground, like when the earth is like red, like I remember I've been to Kenya, and the earth's like that there, and it's so different to England. So different to England. It's beautiful. But yeah, indigenous groups. Yeah, so I think he's probably gonna mention
Uncontacted to this day, but for the purposes of the Portuguese Empire, our story begins with the Treaty of Tordesillas.
Okay, so we're straight up going to the Treaty of Tordesillas, or Tratado de Tordesillas. I don't know. Really dumb treaty. Like what? Let's divide up the world by half. What was the Pope thinking? Okay.
In 1494. With Columbus coming back to Spain all smug about totally finding India, you guys, Portugal worried that its budding colonial aspirations were doomed. After a long talk with the Pope, they agreed to bisect the globe for ease of empire building. Spain and Portugal both got the freedom to claim any non-European land west and east of a specified line, respectively. However, a Portuguese fleet bound for India in 1500 got...
Wait. Oh, I just realised this. If you guys know any software that I can use that is better than what you're witnessing right now, let me know, because this is so annoying. Like, let me just close this. Not a clue. Any idea what's over there? God knows. Cool. So yeah, I read that the Spanish, for various reasons, kept knowledge of this new world under wraps. Like, kept it escondido, because obviously you wouldn't want people joining in on that, and the more people know about it, and like the better maps you have, the easier it is for piracy to, really fucking take off and be aware that there's a whole world of stuff to loot. Whereas the Portuguese tended to focus, they'd already been to like India. Like, I think they'd already been to India. I'm not sure when. Was it Vasco da Gama? I think Vasco da Gama was the first circumnavigate. No, that was Magellan. Was it Vasco da Gama? Am I being really dumb? Vasco da Gama did go around the world. You see, this is why I should have watched the Portuguese one, guys. Right, let's keep watching.
Blown hilariously off course to discover, to everyone's surprise, a substantial landmass just east of that demarcation line. Lucky day. Portugal named it after the abundant supply of reddish-orange Brazilwood trees, which were later used for dyes, among other things. Brazil, as it came to be known, just kind of sat there for the early 16th century, as the big money was being made along Indian.
Who is that? Wait, does it say? Was he the governor or something?
Brazil, as it came to be known, just kind of sat there for the early 16th century, as the big money was being made along Indian spice routes in the east. While Portugal's
Okay, I'm guessing he's some sort of merchant or something. É muito gato. And here we have, yeah, the first sliver, the first morsel that will become Brazil. Because obviously, like, in these times, that's huge. Like, that is massive. Trying to get into the interior is not going to work. You'd have to colonize the coastal areas and, you know, the river basins and stuff. But yeah, I've read that quite recently, actually, the etymology of the word Brazil, because I've always wondered, like, I've never really thought about it, to be honest. Like, why is it called Brazil? But they said it was from Brazil word. I'm trying to remember. I think in Portuguese it's like braço or something. I can't remember. Wait, we'll look at another time. I want to keep watching this because I'm like 10% of the way through and I've already been filming for nearly 12 minutes. But yeah, so the Portuguese, spoiler alert, the Portuguese are going to focus more on like that trade around Africa and the cartay system and controlling like islands that control the various merchant routes all the way to India and the Spice Islands and China and Japan as well. The Portuguese make contact with Japanese. Yeah, and because of that, Brazil like doesn't really play a big part in the Portuguese Empire to begin with. They don't even really press inland, and this is going to be early 1500s. So in about 100 years, 150 years, I know that the Dutch come and they control like this part of the east of Brazil. I think this is the northeast. So you've got like Pernambuco, Bahia, Pará, and really my Brazilian geography is really bad. But yeah, this area, I understand it's quite different from, you know, the southeast that we tend to think of when you say Brazil. Its trade patterns were different and the economy functioned differently, and obviously like geographically it's different, so you grow different crops there, and slavery was a much more profitable business just because, you know, what did Brazil grow with slave labour? A lot of stuff, kitchens, coffee, cotton, sugar, cocoa maybe, tobacco, as well as like, you know, wheat, rice, like normal other food products rather than like cash crops. And I know that there's a lot of like mining potential, but a lot of that's in the interior. So yeah, I think this is literally just like shipbuilding and agriculture and stuff like that, you know, tertiary industry. Anyway, not tertiary, primary.
Seems to not really have cared all that much for Brazil at first. They got real defensive when France tried to muscle in on their territory and clandestinely export Brazilwood. As a result, King João III made an active effort to centralize the Brazilian government, better guard the ports to stop those pesky French, and attract new colonists to move there. Things moved along at a typical colonial pace, making very tenuous contacts with local native groups while government better export Brazilwood. They got real defensive while Portugal seems to not really have cared all that much for Brazil at first. They got real defensive when France tried to muscle in on their territory and clandestinely export Brazilwood.
Interesting. I didn't know that. That's very interesting that this is what's going on. The early 1500s. I had no idea that France expressed an interest in Brazil. The only stuff I know about the French in Latin America, you know, aside from Haiti, and French Guyana here, La Guyane, is obviously Cinco de Mayo and, you know, the French intervention in Mexico, but this is like 350 years later. I had no idea that what was going on in the early 1500s. So the early 1500s, you've got obviously this Portugal, you've got Henry VIII in power in England, and then eventually Edward, and then that girl that was on the throne for like a few days, and then Mary, and then Elizabeth. And also in the 1500s, you've got Spain is unified, and they are in the 1520s. In the 1521, 1519, Hernando Cortés arrives up here. And then later in the 1500s, you've got Francisco Pizarro, who comes down. I think he comes down through Panama and like travels down and fucks up the Incas. And yeah, what would France want with? No, Brazil would. I suppose it's good for ships. Anyway, sorry guys, if you're watching this, if you're still watching this, you can probably tell that I have a lot of mixed opinions and I like to chat more than I think. So feel free to call me out for it on the comments. But I'm learning here. Honestly, didn't realise that France tried to clandestinely export Brazilwood. Got to pay your taxes, bro.
But as a result, King João III made an active effort to centralize
João.
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 I can't do it, man. João.
João.
João. João. João.
João.
João. Oh, right, yeah, no, that's a really difficult sound for gringos to make. Like, that's a really difficult... Anyway.
Centralize the Brazilian government, better guard the ports to stop those pesky French, and attract new colonists to move there. Things moved along at a typical colonial pace, making very tenuous contacts with local native groups while exporting natural resources back to Portugal. Indigenous peoples who got captured for labor typically ran away inland, which might as well have been like jumping off the edge of the earth, because to this day, the coastal mountains have been a colossal barrier to inland development in Brazil. In the absence of a stable local workforce, Brazil, imported one.
The majority of the slaves in the triangle trade that goes... Oh, I just realised you guys can't see if I like point at the screen. Let me do this. Yeah, this triangle trade. It's mad.
Yeah, so the Brazilian economy single-handedly kick-started the transatlantic slave trade, which was supplied by regular Portuguese contact with coastal African populations, and oh man, was it bad. Of the over 10 million people taken from Africa, over 4 million were brought into Brazilian slavery. That's about 10 times that of North America. Yeah. And worse yet, the brutality of their treatment in Brazil meant that turnover was very high, and slaves were almost constantly imported into Brazil until they were finally outlawed in the very late...
So, right, let's go have a look at this. So, from Europe to West Africa, along the way to the Indian Ocean, Portugal by prisoners. There we go. Slaves were then brought across the Atlantic to work in Brazil for sale, and there was revenue from slave labour, and the trade itself returned to Portugal, where it was reinvested into even more slave trading for centuries. Yeah, because it's just mad. So you'd load up in manufactured goods in the, in Europe, so stuff like weapons and like manufactured like shoes, like leather goods like that, as well as like, I think alcohol. Oh no, wait, no, you wouldn't make alcohol. You'd have to have like sugar and stuff like that. You wouldn't make decent alcohol at this point. And like weapons and glass and like other industrial sort of products come down here, arrive in Africa, and you can get like gold or ivory or slaves, biggest one, go across to the New World or like anywhere here, and then load up on raw materials like tobacco, sugar, cotton, coffee, gold, gems, anything, and then just go back, and it just continues. And like, it's mad that you can make money at every step. Fuck. Anyway.
1800s. To make matters worse, the trade itself had a catastrophic and centuries-long effect on coastal African populations and economies. It's just a really bad time. So, with that very depressing sidebar addressed, you may see why the Portuguese treated Brazil as more of a side hustle than its imperial priorities along the Indian spice
Side
routes.
hustle.
That all changed when who else but the French snuck over to capture the harbor city of Rio de Janeiro.
Nous sommes dans votre base, tuons vos hommes. We're in your base, killing your men.
In 1555 because, whoops, Brazil never bothered to fortify it. Someone...
Wait, they took Rio because it wasn't fortified.
Harbor city of Rio de Janeiro in 1555 because, whoops, Brazil never bothered to to fortify it. Someone's getting fired for that. And in other things that make very little sense, apparently Rio de Janeiro is supposed to be pronounced Rio de Janeiro. And to that I ask one question, and that is, what did the letter R ever do to you guys? But while I could confusedly stare at linguistics all day, we should probably move on to the early and mid-1600s, when Portugal's unwelcome participation in the Iberian Union with Spain meant that they had to deal with all of Spain's enemies, and in this case that entailed the Dutch trying to yoink Brazil from Brazil. After Portugal broke off its 60-year marriage with Spain, Brazil ultimately ousted the Dutch by themselves. All of 1600s.
So, this is the Iberian Union. What's his face? I don't know what the king was called. He's probably called like João or like Pedro or something. I don't know. Yeah, Iberian Union, which I thought it was later than this. Wait, let me just check.
Portugal's unwelcome participation in the Iberian Union with Spain meant...
Yeah, that's it. So from 1580 to 1640. So some pretty important stuff happening in Europe in this time. So with 1600, you have like the start of the Amsterdam Stock Exchange and the Dutch fighting for their independence, which I think is finally granted in 1648. After the end of the 30 Years' War in Europe. Obviously, the 30 Years' War in Europe massively changes the face of Central Europe, and you've also got the French Wars of Religion, various other wars of religion, bad times going on in the world. Also, you have the rise of the Qing dynasty in China. The Manchus come down and fuck everything up, and... yeah, I think, what was it? They called it the 17th century crisis, like the pure amount of bullshittery that happened in this century, the 1600s. But yeah, this is really interesting. Yeah, let's keep watching. So the Iberian Union for 60
meant
years.
that they had to deal with all of Spain's enemies, and in this case that entailed the Dutch trying to yoink Brazil from Brazil.
Cool.
After Portugal broke...
Oh, interesting. Okay, so the Dutch take this, which I think... I'm probably wrong, but I think this is the state of Pará and the city of Belém, which actually, I didn't realise Belém means Bethlehem, like, or at least in Spanish, like when they say Belém, it's Bethlehem in English, which is just crazy. And then, yeah, you've got, I don't really, as I said, guys, my my Brazilian geography is terrible, but I think this is like Recife, Fortaleza, and a bunch of other like really weird shaped states like around here. But yeah, their dialect's really strange. I'm trying to learn Portuguese, as you can probably tell. But oh my god, the northeast of Brazil, Jesus, I can't do that.
Broke off its 60-year marriage with Spain, Brazil ultimately ousted the Dutch by themselves in 1654, which got people thinking, hey, maybe these Portuguese guys care more about spices than us Brazilians.
The Brazilians kicked the Dutch out. No, sorry, the Brazilians left the Iberian Union before Portugal did. How the fuck does that happen?
Thinking exactly that for another 150 years until that train of thought came to its logical conclusion. So yeah, stay tuned for the inevitable independence movement. Since getting glomped by the Iberian Union, Brazil expanded outwards and a bit inland, though 3 of the 4 biggest cities, Recife, Salvador, and...
Okay. Right. Wait, did they say 3 or 5?
Rio were still coastal.
Oh, okay.
And a bit inland, though 3 of the 4 biggest cities, Recife, Salvador, and Rio...
Right, okay, so Recife, which is what I called it until like last year when I realised it's Recife. And then Salvador, which is in Bahia, Rio, in Rio, and then this, I've not heard of this, but I know that Ouro Preto means, I think it means ready gold, like gold that's ready. Like, I know that preto means like, wait, no, that's presto. No, pronto? Oh my god, guys, there's so many pronto, presto, preto, all of that. Right, preto means black. That's it, yeah. So ouro preto means black gold, which in English means oil. But let me just check. I think, whoa. Black gold. Yeah. Ouro preto.
Ouro preto.
Yeah. Ouro preto. Black gold, which I think this is going to become the city of Belo Horizonte. Belo Horizonte. God, so English. So English. Yeah, I think this becomes Belo Horizonte. Which, and the only reason I'm saying this is because geographically I'm pretty sure it's there. That's where the city is nowadays. But also because it's in a state called Minas Gerais, which I'm pretty sure means general mines. Like, how do you say... Fucking hell, come on. Yeah, so Minas means mines, and then that means Gerais means general, yeah, so general public mines. So black gold, what's black when it's in the ground? I suppose everything. Anyway, guys, I'm getting really sidetracked. I'm so sorry. Let's continue.
Were still coastal. Strengthening economic ties and a lasting linguistic bridge kept Brazil looking eastward to their increasingly responsible parent state rather than mingling with their Spanish-speaking neighbors. It also helped that there was a metric Amazon in the way. Speaking of economics, sugar later joined Brazil wood as a key export, and soon Brazilians would finally have a motivation for making the trek over the mountains and inland because somebody discovered gold. Along with demographics and economics, the political weight of Brazil shifted to gold-adjacent Rio de Janeiro, which
just over the mountains of Minas Gerais, a huge supply of gold triggered a relocation southwards. Yeah. Wait, is it the city that's called Belo Horizonte, like Beautiful Horizon, or the state? I can't remember. I'm pretty sure it's called Minas Gerais, which are like the general mines in this area. God, yeah, these coastal mountains, man.
Which became the capital of the colony in 1763. Admittedly, this switch happened over half a century after the gold was first discovered, but given the gold rush continued on for another century after this, I figure better late than never. Coincidentally, this ludicrously...
And something that's actually quite important that they don't seem to have mentioned is in 1755 there was a huge earthquake in Lisbon. Like massive, and it destroyed a lot of the old city. It's quite a shame. Yeah, and that was quite important for the Enlightenment because I've read, I can't remember where, but I've read that it really shocked people because obviously, oh my god, like, and also with an earthquake, like, it's not just the initial that's dangerous, it's the fact that most of the buildings are made of wood or have like really flammable material, not flammable, but you know, easily lightable easily flammable material, and then the fires rage. And also Lisbon's quite like on the water, like it's right by the Tragus, I don't know, it's right by a river, so tsunamis and stuff, and just it was a nightmare. But yeah, in this earthquake, they a lot of the churches were destroyed, but a lot of brothels weren't. So how's that, God? EAE.
lucrative resource rush around Rio had a considerable...
Oh yeah, sorry. The reason why I'm saying that is that it doesn't seem to have been mentioned here. I'm not sure if it was that important to Brazil, but it's probably took a lot of the government's attention. Not that it should. Well, you know, I'm not here to pass judgment on these long dead people, but it's probably had kind of an effect on Brazil feeling a bit more like a colony rather than an equal partner.
effect back in Lisbon as well. With British and Dutch traders squeezing Portugal out of their old Indian Ocean trade routes, Brazil's newfound wealth made an Atlantic imperial pivot the logical choice. Back on the Iberian Peninsula, losing the spice monopoly wasn't even the worst of it. In 1755, a triple disaster in the form of an earthquake, tidal wave, and fires leveled most of Lisbon and set Portugal on a long and painful rebuilding process. To make matters worse, along came Napoleon to throw everyone for a loop at the turn of the century. In an attempt to blockade England from the Mediterranean and South Atlantic, Napoleon brought the Bonaparte into Iberia. In 1807,
Bonaparte, that's pretty good. Right, now this is my remit. Right, I'm very learnt on this as of recently. Cool. So you've got João coming over, João VI, who's coming over with his Spanish wife, who is apparently a bitch. and they're going to come to Rio, and he's got his son Pedro, who's also got a son called Pedro, who becomes like the real G. And yeah, I've kind of lost my flow now. But yeah, so they come over to Brazil, love it so much that his son ends up staying and becomes the first king of Brazil, first emperor of Brazil. And João becomes king in like 1817, I think, is because he's the prince at this point. He's like the crown prince.
Queen Maria and her son Dom João booked it right the hell out of Portugal with a British escort to establish a new government in exile in Brazil. The royals, very thankful to be alive, opened up the Brazilian economy to foreign powers, but really mostly England, whereas the colony had...
Yeah, oh yeah, that was it, because now as a, like, not a normal country, but yeah, as like the capital, as the base, like the centro, I nearly said centro, yeah, as the centro of the Portuguese Empire, they're not going to have the same restrictions that say that they can't, like, trade and that they can't have external relations with, like, third parties, third countries, you know. Now they're going to get that taste of independence, and once you move back to Portugal after the war, I don't think that's going to be quite hard to, what they call it, the cat's out of the bag now. Like, it's quite difficult to get it back in.
Had previously been trading exclusively with Portugal. Though Maria was still technically the monarch, her son João did a lot of the governing, establishing a slew of official offices, councils, and agencies in their new home of Rio. In 1816, Dom João became King João VI, 3 years after...
Bruh, look at him. What is going on with this face? Sorry, please don't think that I would pick on someone for their looks, but I love olden days paintings and what they think things look like. Like, look at his face, man. Que feio.
After Napoleon withdrew from
Looks like a
Portugal,
fish.
and 1 year after he got Waterlooed. But despite Portugal being safe, João insisted on staying in Brazil on the basis of Lisbon sucks and this place is a tropical paradise. Which, when you're comparing post-earthquake to post-gold rush, yeah, that makes sense to me. However, in 1821, revolts of monarchical dissatisfaction...
Wait, was that in the video?
Yeah, that makes sense to me. However, in 1821, revolts of monarchical dissatisfaction...
Oh, God. Oh, fuck's sake. I thought that was my doorbell.
Faction in Lisbon meant that João sadly had to leave Brazil to go be King of Portugal, whatever that means, but he left his kiddo Dom Pedro behind to keep charge. Portugal, having some post-war problems, wanted to undo the reforms of João and restore Brazil to subservient colony status. But when the Portuguese parliament asked Pedro to return to...
Just look at that hair, man. I'd vote for him. I wouldn't even vote for him. I'd put him in power. Hey guys, can you devote your entire the existence of your continental masters, please? No.
To Lisbon to stop him from getting crazy ideas of forming an independent empire, Pedro said, yo, dude, I should totally form an independent empire, and in 1822 he did exactly that, declaring a new constitutional monarchy with the help of the Brazilian...
This is so fucking dumb. Like, it's just I like the irreverence in the animation. Hey, there we go. Green and yellow are the house... Damn it. Green and yellow are the colours of the Royal House of Bragança. Didn't know that until I watched the Empire Brazil series by Extra Credits. But yeah, 1822. Woo! That was... Oh shit, that was 200 years ago this year. Cool. Right, anyway, so here we go. This is where the... shit really starts to kick in.
Independence Party. New King Pedro even gave a famous speech known as the I Am Staying speech that clearly articulated
I'm staying speech. Oof, sorry guys, you should have done better at providing the will.
his best wishes.
What's the I am staying speech? I want to hear this. Eu tô ficando. I am staying. I kind of want to... Wait, let me just check. What is this? Dia do Fico. Cool. Right. Dia do Fico. Yeah, I Stay Day. Day of I Stay. From the speech that Pedro gave to Brazil on the day. Se é para o bem de todos e felicidade geral da nação. Tô pronto. Digo meu povo que fico. Right, I'm not looking at the English translation. That means, if it is for the good of everyone and general happiness of the nation, I'm ready. Tell the people that I'm staying. Since it's... Yeah, I'm pretty much right. Yeah, I'd say that's an alright translation. Oh, tô pronto also means I'm willing, not I'm ready. Cool. Right. Yes. I feel vindicated now. Not vindicated. I feel relevant. Relevant?
For the Parliament of Portugal to kindly pack it in and mind their own damn business. After a brief run of nation planning between 1822 and 1824, other powers recognized Brazilian independence and the newly minted empire got to work. Compared to other independence movements in South America during the early 19th century, Brazil's was doing alright. Gold was still plentiful, and compared to the sprawling size of the empire, there wasn't too much per capita revolting. One notable kerfuffle pitted the emperor against the Constituent Assembly, and in the end Pedro forced a new constitution that strengthened his hand over government. However, as far as the citizenry was concerned, provisions...
Just look at this, like... Can you imagine living in colonial Rio? And also, look at this art style. It looks really Asian to me. Like, this looks really like... Or not Asian, it looks really inspired by, like, the type of, like, painting that you'd see like in Japan or China at this. Like, it's just mad. More Japan than China, to be honest, I think.
For civil rights and freedom of speech made Brazil surprisingly liberal and progressive for its time.
Just look at it. The thing is, if I want, I could look at a better quality photo of Rio nowadays. Like, but this is just wow.
Time. With the main exception of the emperor sitting atop the rest of government, it was similarly styled to other republican constitutions.
God, look how big it is, man. Jesus.
With the judicial, executive, and legislative branch, and Pedro largely respected the institutions he presided over. However, Pedro I was eventually forced to abdicate in 1831 after having his pants handed to...
Yeah, so... I don't know what this was called, but you have the southern province. Well, actually, it's more like here, because this is like Porto Alegre and what's it called? Rio Grande do Sul. But below that, you've got Uruguay, which I don't know what the Portuguese called it, but yeah, Uruguay was sort of torn between Argentina. Well, Rio de Plata. What's it called? Rio de la Plata? Rio de Plata, I think in Portuguese. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, Uruguay eventually, as we all know, became independent and the first country to properly legalise cannabis, I think. Or at least in South America. It might be the first to properly legalise it in the world in recent times. I remember doing a report for it on school. Anyway, yeah, no, Brazil lost that war and Uruguay gained independence. But... there'll be more
to him in war against Argentina and attempting a series of highly unpopular reforms. He left his 5-year-old son Pedro II in line for the throne, and the next decade saw 3 different regions attempt to rule over Brazil.
Like, just, olha, que lindo. E ele nasceu no Brasil. He was like the first one that was actually born in Brazil, is what I'm trying to say. Yeah, am I being dumb? Am I being really dumb? Yeah, Pedro II was the first one to... Yeah, he was the first one in Brazil.
Poorly, I should add, while the royal tween got up to speed on how to empire. Eventually, the National Assembly got sick of waiting and crowned the 14-year-old as emperor of one of the Earth's largest contiguous territories. No pressure. Now I know what you're thinking. Hey Blue, we literally just saw this go to hell in the China video. How soon until South America completely implodes with a teenager in charge? But, surprise surprise, Pedro II turned out to be a smart, compassionate, and almost consistently competent ruler. And that is the absolute last time I ever buy into the office monarch madness pool. To use the basketball parlance, your boy Blue got dunked on. Anyway, reigning for almost 60 years, Pedro...
Look at me. Right. Cool, so I'm guessing this is Pedro, what's his face, and that's his missus. I think he's married to... Wasn't he married to a Spanish woman? No, not a Spanish woman. He was like a German lady, maybe. It was another nobility.
Pedro oversaw Brazil's transformation into a true international superpower. Along with substantial exports and a stable government, Pedro is said to have wanted to be a teacher, so a strong education program was central to his administration. He also oversaw the abolition of slavery against the vehement wishes of the aristocratic slave-owning class. He had taken a series of provisional steps, such as the outlawing of birthright slavery, to gradually eliminate the institution, but it was...
Yeah. Baby steps. So... oh my god, what was it? In the first half of the 1800s, you banned the slave trade. Not slavery, but the slave trade, importing slaves. But from what I've read, they didn't really... From what I learned in the extra credits video, that wasn't properly enforced until at least 1850. And it was after that Brazil really started to make those... I was going to say pesos, was it? Make those reais. Yeah, that's it. Those reais. And then, yeah, you have the free womb law for no birthright slavery, and then no slavery for people over the age of like 60 or something. And yeah, I think men that were slaves, people that were born to a woman that was enslaved and a free man were free. And also, obviously, we're going to get to it, but the Paraguayan War as well was pretty important.
It was his daughter Isabel who brought the hammer down, declaring it abolished while Pedro was out in Europe in 1888. Given the long and
then 1 year later, the Republic of Brazil, the first Brazilian Republic, is proclaimed.
Gruesome history of the Portuguese slave trade and the fact that Brazil was pretty much the last major power to outlaw slavery, it didn't happen a moment too soon. As time went on though, Pedro became increasingly wary of Brazil's future as he resented the role of the emperor after almost 60 years in power and didn't see a good option for his successor. But after his daughter put the final nail in the coffin of slavery, the military and landowning aristocracy were just miffed enough to take care of that problem for him. A coup in 1889 ousted poor Pedro, exiling him to Europe to live.
Yeah, it was definitely the no slavery thing, but that's just my opinion, my uninformed opinion. Felipe Cajera, I think, very cool guy, left a comment under one of the previous Brazil videos about the extra credits one, saying that actually if Isabella, I think it was Pedro's daughter, I think she must have been the oldest daughter, a filha maior, and she would have been sick. Like, he didn't think that women would suit the not the monarchy, but you know, he didn't think that women would make a good emperor. But apparently Isabella, like, she sounds like a bit of a legend, to be honest. Like, I don't know why he hasn't... Oh, pardon me. Don't know why he was against it. Who knows? Complicated, very complicated relationship with the crown and power. It must be when you know, become the crown prince when you're 5 years old. That's a bit intense. Anyway, let's keep watching.
Live alone on very little money before dying 2 years later in Paris. Back in Brazil, the empire had been overthrown in favor of a new republic that historians refer
This is dumb.
to as the Old Republic, which, in addition to being declared non-canon by...
I'm tempted to ask, how do you oust the constitutional republic only to declare it with... How do you oust the constitutional monarchy only to replace it with a dictatorial republic? Yeah, I was going to say, like, that's how things tend to go. Like, damn.
by Disney saw elections serially manipulated by powerful politicians and landowners for decades. Subsequently, Brazil went through an absolute carousel of governments through the 1900s. You can honestly set your watches by the military dictatorships. One bright spot in the middle of the century came under the tenure of Juscelino Kubitschek, who moved the capital from Rio de Janeiro to Brasilia.
I really want to go there, and there's a lot of places I really want to go, but Brasilia is one of them. Because I can't remember what he's called, but there's a really famous architect who's got like a German sounding name, but I'm pretty sure he's Brazilian, like Oscar Niedermeyer, something like that. And like the architecture just looks really cool. But weird city in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, we're getting to a more modern, recognisable Brazil now. I think the final military republic that Bolsonaro really enjoys to talk about and reminisce about, I think that ended in 1988, 1989. I'm pretty sure, I could be wrong. It might be 1980. But I'm pretty sure it's around the end of the 1980s that the democracy comes to Brazil again.
Yeah, established inland in the middle of nowhere and constructed out of basically nothing, with the purpose...
Yeah, like, look at this, man. Like, for a planned city, like, no offence to all you Americans watching, no offence, I've got nothing against planned cities, or if you're from Milton Keynes, lol, like, Milton Keynes, but this is just, look at this. Dubai could never. Oh. Okay. Oh, there it is. Right. Portuguese Empire. Really good video. Let me make this a bit bigger. Cool. Really good video. I really enjoyed this. I've actually learnt quite a lot. I didn't realise the French wanted Brazil so much. I thought it was just the Dutch. But yeah, I really enjoyed that. That was very interesting to watch. I learnt that Belo Horizonte used to be called Black Gold, Ouro Preto, something like that. Yeah, really good. If you guys can recommend any more like Brazil history, like especially one that looks at a specific, like there's a lot of videos, like for example this one, that look at the whole history, which of course I'm going to be watching. I live for these kind of videos, but also like something that will look at in depth, like what was this time period like. And also I've noticed a lot of the really good content for Brazil is all in English. Like I find it really hard to find good documentarios. So if you leave any, if you see any like any content that you think I would enjoy, because hopefully if you've watched this, I'm probably going to make this into 2 videos to be honest, because I've been talking for like nearly an hour now. But yeah, I really enjoyed that. So if you liked this, then thank you. I really appreciate it. Mwah, mwah. This was a good thing to watch. Se você gosta, deixa like e comentário abaixo. Aqui, well, not here, because this is obviously not my video, but you know what to do. Anyway, guys, I really need to go for a poo, so I'm gonna wrap it up now. But I feel like we've all learned something today. Think about that. Beijinhos.